I have a little graph here, and I'll pass it around because I know you can't see it. It's little, but it's taxes on the top 1% of Americans. And just to save the suspense, it begins with Kennedy in '61, where they're paying up here. And the graph goes sort of like that. So that when we get to George W. Bush in 2008, they're paying less than 40%, where the marginal rate was 90% under Kennedy. Now, things were a lot better in the 60s. There was more employment, the growth was faster. When taxes were higher, our economy was growing much better. Every tax cut has been a slower rate of growth of the economy. That's because people don't have money to buy things. You could lend it to them, but after a while people couldn't borrow anymore, and then that collapses. The graph under it is the percentage of American income going to the top 1% of households. Again, to save the suspense, they're doing all right under Kennedy, but man, are they doing all right under George W. Bush and on into Obama. I'll pass it around for those of you who like to see graphs. Where the money is to pay for all this should be very clear to us. But there has been the biggest snow job in the history, I don't know the history of the world, you don't want to claim too much for this kind of thing, but it is truly amazing. Here we have a situation where the reason the government doesn't have money is rich people don't pay taxes. Now those are just individual taxes. Do you know how many corporations are incorporated in the Grand Cayman Islands? There are these 3 little Grand Cayman Islands. They're not very grand. I don't know how many people live down. It's not very much. But there are corporations headquarters there. And when you go to this place, you wonder where the headquarters. And if you're really that naive and you ask somebody, I did, they point out this sort of 3-story office building, and inside are these little mailboxes. And they said, in there is the corporation. Legally, it's in that box. And somebody does come around and check the mail. But it's all done electronically from New York and Chicago and Los Angeles. And if these guys have ever been down there, vacation maybe. But they don't pay taxes because they're incorporated there. And there's no public disclosure. And the government does not cooperate when foreign governments, namely ours, ask them questions about these people. Well, that's one tax haven, but it's the 5th largest money center in the world. Well, I don't think. So that we have a situation where it's not just, as you'll see, stop slobbering over it and pass it on. It's not just the very rich, and among these very rich are more and more Wall Street people, hedge fund people. You had 25 hedge fund people who made over $1 billion last year. $1 billion, and of course a lot made hundreds of millions. And the ones that are paying, the hedge funds, of course, are in the little box in the Bahamas. They do pay they don't pay income tax. They pay carried interest to the United States, paying a fraction of what we pay in our income tax. You may think you're cheating the government like crazy. You don't begin to know about tax avoidance until you've seen transfer payments by corporations. So that Apple has a postage box somewhere, I'm not sure it's in the Grand Cayman Islands, that owns all its intellectual property. It buys it from them and pays them money. So it doesn't have much profit left over after it paid for the intellectual property. And of course, the little subsidiary that owns the intellectual property, they don't pay taxes to anybody. So we have a situation where transnational corporations have we go all night on the various ways they don't pay taxes. And of course, rich individuals don't pay taxes. That leaves Bill, and of course the rest of us. So we have a situation where the government supposedly has no money. First, because it bailed out the banks and all of that. But and here I want to be careful, because the banks have all paid back the money they borrowed. They paid it back because the government would lend them as much money as they wanted to buy and sell on the market, make lots of money. Their trading profits are huge. As the markets come up, they've made out like bandits. And they paid nothing to borrow the money. Interest rates are just about zero. Retired folks who were counting on the money they saved, a lot of which is in, IRAs and stuff, because they don't trust the stock market anymore, are getting nothing. So in their retirement, when they thought they could count on that 4%, and they could get by, they're really in a bad way. Anybody who's trying to save now is crazy, right? Because you don't earn anything. So we have this kind of situation. The money is there. We just can't get at it under the current rules. The other things, of course, Barry was talking about war. And I don't think we want to forget that the military expenditures have gone up 50% since 2001. The vast increase in military spending of wars of choice in Iraq and Afghanistan cost an incredible amount of money. They cost in lives, and they cost in dollars. Every time one of those planes drops a, quote, smart bomb and wipes out a wedding party somewhere, that is a huge amount of money, as well as making enemies for us all over the Middle East, ensuring that it really will be an eternal war on those folks. Obama at least has a grace not to call it a war on terrorism anymore, but it is creating terrorists all over the place. And if you thought for 5 minutes, if you lived over there and watched what was happening, you would, of course, be fighting the United States too. And for Americans not to understand that. But we have, and I don't want to do too much of that, but we cannot forget the drain of the military, as well, Barry also pointed out, on environmental grounds. The military, one of those guys flying around for 20 minutes undoes the good, all of us who try and think about the environment and in our personal lives try and change the way we do it. So that's one thing. And of course the tax cuts under Bush to the rich. That Obama's anti-recession big stimulus is really a drop in the bucket. Government spending to counter the recession is tiny compared to what was needed, and it's tiny compared to the other things that are taking money from us. I want to just say a few more things about Medicare, Social Security, because, and then I'll stop and we can get into discussion questions. The attack on Social Security is the same attack we've had since it was introduced in the 30s. Social Security is not a problem with very small changes. It's good for the next 75 years. We could talk about raising, you only pay up to now $106,000 of your income. Raise that a bit, the problem goes away. You don't have to make people work longer to cut their programs. It's basically a very sound system. Social Security is not in trouble, and I brought some numbers if people want. Healthcare is, not Medicare. Medicare actually offers, or Medicaid. Medicare, which is what they're going after, is expensive only because American healthcare costs twice as much as anybody else's healthcare. Medicare itself is much more efficient than private health plans. It is a very efficient program. It is not a costly, on a per person basis program compared to private healthcare. The problem is the rate at which healthcare costs go up in this country because of our free enterprise healthcare system. If we were to adopt, take your pick, the French, the German, the Swiss, the Canadian, anybody's, and there's no more healthcare problem because you're now doing it at a reasonable level. So for them to, here's the way it went. The son of a bitches caused this incredible crisis, as everybody says, the worst since the Great Depression, which is now over for the corporations and the banks, just not for the rest of us. It has bankrupted the government, which bailed them out, and their tax revenues went down because people aren't working and all the rest of it, and because of this tremendous tax avoidance. The government always runs a larger deficit after a financial crisis. There is a book, a very famous book written by these two professors. They go back 800 years of financial crises. The book is called, I think it's different this time. But it's always the same. One of the statistics in the book is in modern financial crises, government debt goes up on an average of 86% after a financial crisis. There's nothing unique about this increase in government debt. It always happens. But the change in conversation from the destruction done by Wall Street and the financial system to its social security and welfare and big government spending has been amazing. Snow job. The retired people didn't cause this crisis. Union pension funds didn't cause it. State elected officials did by not putting money away. They're still saying their pension funds get 8% a year. If anyone knows how to get 8% on my savings, please tell me, right? And it was collusion between trade union people and the local officials to hold down labor costs in the current period, to hold down taxes. They gave more generous retirement benefits, and workers understood this, that they would be getting it. And now it's being taken away because the money wasn't put in for it, and the economy collapsed and all the rest of it, bringing the attack on the public sector. The attack on the public sector is saying, hey, we in the private sector, we've lost our pensions, we've lost our jobs. Hey, you fuckers still have jobs and pensions. That's not fair. You should live in the street like the rest of us. No, you should have jobs and pensions, and we should, and the working class should live decently in the richest country in the world and not be betrayed by its capitalist class that has done this to us and put us in this situation. So all of this is important to understand, rather than to talk about, I love the Blue-Green Alliance stuff and, solar panels, and there are very useful ways that would help the environment and would create jobs in America. It's not happening because the solar groups we've had are moving to China because the Chinese give them a better deal. They lend them the money, set up the plant, they give them the water, the electricity, the road. The kind of things the TVA did in this country. The kind of thing Alexander Hamilton set up. So that the country, and this is the sort of the final point, is there was a Fred, the UE cartoonist.
Fred Wright.
Fred Wright, the wonderful cartoon So Long Partner, where the American jobs are going. He had that, 20, 30 years ago, of what American capital has done to us. So that until this is seen in class terms, which I know is no surprise to you, but until we are much louder and clearer on our politics, because most Americans can see this. You spend 10 minutes with most people, they get it. And this has got to be translated into a political movement. And of course, the disillusion with Obama doesn't help any. But if people understand why that took place, and why, if you were Obama, you'd be doing everything he's doing.
Say that again.
If you were Obama, you would be doing everything he's doing. It's overdetermined. Either he's shot as soon as he does the kind of stuff you would do. The rest of the Democratic Party starts yelling at him, we're all going to lose the next election, cut this shit out. Right? And of course he doesn't get reelected and all that. And the Republicans then come in with such horrible stuff that yes, even you would not take the principled stand and see all those things happen, because there's not a movement forcing you to do it and aware voters supporting you in doing it, and so that limits what you could do, or you could do, or you could do if you were Obama at this point. And it's just, I'll just maybe stop there, but it's this larger context and how we deal with it, rather than the more narrow of very good job proposals. Those are important because they show what we need and what we could do, but we also show why we don't have it and what we need to get it. Thanks very much.